Somewhere in the Iraqi desert, in the summer of 636 AD, 1,000 years of history was about to end in 7 minutes. The Sasanian Empire was the most powerful dynasty on earth, 4 centuries of fire, conquest, and unbroken Persian pride. From the fire temples of Ctesiphon to the mountains of Afghanistan, no army had ever truly broken them. But by 636 AD, a new force had exploded out of the Arabian Peninsula with a speed and ferocity nobody had predicted. The Arab Muslim armies had already destroyed the Byzantine force at Yarmouk. Now they turned their blades east. One man stood between the Arab advance and the Persian heartland, the great general Rostam Farrokhzad. He was the finest military mind in Persia and the last real hope of the Sasanian throne. The battlefield chosen was al-Qadisiyyah, a flat desert plain where Persian numbers and elephants should have guaranteed victory. The Arab commander Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas positioned his men carefully, outnumbered but disciplined and utterly committed. The Arabs had never faced war elephants in this number, 30 armored giants that could shatter any cavalry charge. Rostam spent 3 days trying to negotiate. He knew a battle here was a gamble even with Persian superiority. The Arab commanders refused every offer. They had not come to negotiate, they had come to conquer. Rostam accepted the inevitable and gave the order to advance at dawn. On the first morning, the Persians advanced with the earth-shaking confidence of an empire that had never been broken. The war elephants hit the Arab lines like battering rams, and for a moment, the Arab formation began to crack. But the Arabs had prepared a counter, trained camel riders whose mounts did not panic at the scent of elephants. The elephants turned on their own men, and the carefully planned Persian advance dissolved into chaos. For 3 days the battle raged, neither side able to deliver the killing blow, the bodies piling in the desert heat. Rostam watched from his elevated command position as his numerical advantage slowly failed to produce victory. On the 4th day, a supernatural sandstorm swept in from the west, blasting directly into the Persian lines. The Persian soldiers, blinded and choking, began to break formation, and Rostam made a fatal decision. He moved away from his command position, seeking cover from the storm beneath a line of loaded supply mules. The great general of Persia was now crouching in the dirt beneath a mule, and an Arab warrior had spotted him. Hilal ibn Ullafa saw the helmet glinting through the storm, and he moved toward it without hesitation. For 1 second they looked at each other across the dust, the general and the warrior, empire and desert. Hilal moved first, and the 7 minutes of hell began. Rostam was not a weak man. He had fought in a dozen campaigns and survived them all, but he was fighting in the worst possible ground, confined, blinded by dust, with panicking animals on all sides. A mule's leg caught Rostam's sword arm, and for 1 second he was completely defenseless. Rostam drove him back, years of battlefield experience coming through his body faster than thought. Nobody came to help. The sandstorm had swallowed the world and left them alone in a 7-second universe. A falling packload clipped Rostam's shoulder, and Hilal felt the change in his opponent's balance immediately. The sword was gone, kicked under a mule's hooves by the chaos, and Rostam's hands found only sand. They went down together, rolling in the dirt between the hooves, fighting with knees and elbows and fists. For 3 seconds, Rostam's grip held the blade away. 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. The blood from Rostam's cut palm made the grip slick, and his arm began to shake. Hilal felt the grip loosen and drove the blade down with everything he had. The blow landed, and for 1 moment, al-Qadisiyyah went completely silent around that mule train. Hilal stood over the body of the Sasanian Empire's greatest general, and he understood what it meant. He screamed it across the battlefield. "Rostam is dead. The Persian general is dead." The words hit the Arab army like a lightning bolt, and a new ferocity ignited across the entire line. The Persian soldiers who heard it first stopped fighting, and that moment of hesitation was all it took. Without Rostam's command voice, without his presence, the Persian chain of command simply evaporated. The right flank broke first, then the center, then it was every man for himself across the entire battlefield. An army of 80,000 men dissolved in 30 minutes because 1 man had died in 7. Thousands drowned in the Euphrates trying to flee, the river red with the blood of the empire's last defenders. When the sun set on al-Qadisiyyah, the Sasanian army no longer existed as a fighting force. The Arabs took the Sasanian standards not as trophies but as testimony. They had defeated something enormous. The road to Ctesiphon, the Sasanian capital, was now undefended, and the Arab army began to march. When the news reached the Sasanian court, the young emperor Yazdegerd III fled and never returned to his capital. The Taqq Arch still stands in Iraq today, all that remains above ground of the greatest empire of its age. Rostam Farrokhzad died as he had lived, fighting in the dirt without surrender. The Arab soldiers who found his body reportedly stood in silence. Even in death, Rostam commanded respect. In 1,000 fire temples across Persia, the sacred flames still burned, unaware that the world had changed. 1 million Persian families began a migration that would reshape the culture of Central Asia for centuries. Some Zoroastrian priests sailed to India, carrying their sacred fires, and their community survives there still, called the Parsis. Military historians still debate what would have happened if Rostam had survived those 7 minutes. The Sasanian court had been the most sophisticated civilization on earth: science, poetry, medicine, architecture. But Persian culture was not destroyed. It survived, transformed, and eventually absorbed the conquerors themselves. The Arab Caliphate built its capital near Ctesiphon and filled it with Persian administrators, scholars, and artists. Within a generation, Persian was the language of Islamic science and poetry. The conquered had conquered the conqueror's culture. The Sasanian dynasty traced its roots to Cyrus the Great. 14 centuries of Persian imperial tradition ended here. The trade routes that had made Persia rich for centuries now enriched the new Arab Caliphate instead. Province by province, city by city, the Sasanian Empire transferred peacefully to Arab rule. Its army was gone. Resistance was hopeless. The last Sasanian emperor, Yazdegerd III, spent 20 years as a fugitive in his own former empire before being murdered. He died in a miller's hut near Merv in 651 AD, the last ember of a dynasty that had once shaken the world. Hilal ibn Ullafa, the man who killed Rostam, never became famous in the way his deed deserved. His commanders understood what his 7 minutes had accomplished. Even if the history books would barely mention his name, history remembers empires and emperors, but it was one anonymous warrior's blade that decided everything. Archaeologists today are still finding the physical evidence of al-Qadisiyyah beneath the Iraqi desert. Every fragment of armor they find is a piece of a world that vanished in a single afternoon. Military historians classify al-Qadisiyyah as one of the 10 most decisive battles in world history. The lesson of al-Qadisiyyah is brutal and simple. The greatest empires are only as strong as their most critical human link. Stand on that desert plain today and you would see nothing, just sand and sky and the distant river. But the descendants of that civilization still light the sacred fire in Mumbai, in Toronto, in London. The Persian language, Persian poetry, Persian mathematics, all of it survived the fall of the Sasanian throne. The Taqq Arch still stands, a monument to everything that was lost and everything that survived. When you touch those ancient bricks, you are touching the world that ended in 7 minutes at al-Qadisiyyah. One empire, one general, one warrior, one blade, and 7 minutes that nobody could take back. The question that historians still cannot fully answer is the one that matters most. If Rostam had walked away from those 7 minutes alive, could the Sasanian Empire have survived the Arab conquest, or was its fall already written in the sand? Tell us what you think below, and subscribe, because this is only the beginning.